right, and welcome to Fast Break Breakfast, NBA podcast. My name is Keith, here alone for a solo interview episode. The full episode with John and Chuck will be out on Thursday, late Thursday at our regular time. If you missed it, or if you want to check it out in our podcast feed, we put up a crossover episode where Chuck went on John's other podcast, which is also food-themed, a movie podcast called Food Court. So that went up in our podcast feed. So if you want to check that out, make sure you do, talking about Steven Soderbergh's Netflix film High Flying Bird, which is also about the NBA. So John and Chuck are on the podcast Food Court. They went up on our feed. Check that out. And again, our full regular episode will be out on Thursday. This one was recorded with Haley O'Shaughnessy of The Ringer. We talked about kind of general NBA topics. We talked a lot about the Lakers because, I mean, they're just dominating the news cycle, and I'm obsessed with them. We recorded this on Monday afternoon. I'm talking right now in the first quarter of Clippers-Lakers. Sorry, I'm not going to commit to staying up for that whole game. I might, but I'm definitely not going to work on podcast once it's over. So I'm going to go ahead and get this podcast episode posted so I can relax and watch the rest of the basketball. We also talk about the Suns and just some other random teams, Karl Anthony Towns, just random players she likes. So it bounces around, so hopefully there's something for everyone that enjoys it. If you want to support the show, again, patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. We plug it a lot. Also, when you're buying tickets, make sure you go to SeatGeek.com, use the SeatGeek app, look at all the best prices for whatever event you're going to, a sporting event, a music event, comedy. SeatGeek will show you the best ticket prices from around the internet. And the best thing is, we have a promo code, FASTBREAKBREAK, same as my Twitter handle, that will get you $20 off your first purchase. So you can't beat that. SeatGeek shows you the best deals for any ticketed event, and you get $20 off on top of that when you use our promo code FASTBREAKBREAK at checkout. So SeatGeek.com, use our code FASTBREAKBREAK. My guest today covers the NBA for The Ringer and is a first-time guest on Fast Break Breakfast, Haley O'Shaughnessy.
Hello. How are you?
Haley, how's it going?
Going great.
Good. We're happy to have you. We start off all of our episodes asking our guests if they've had breakfast. Did you have breakfast?
Of course. And knowing that I was coming on, I had an extra great breakfast.
Oh.
I made chocolate chip banana bread over the weekend.
Okay.
So I finished it off, and I had a grapefruit, and I had a ton of coffee.
That is a very good breakfast.
I know. Banana bread is such a cheap breakfast because, especially with the amount of chocolate chips I put in, it's like definitely just cake. So yeah. I basically had cake for breakfast.
I had jelly beans for breakfast, so yours sounds more healthy. I have a sweet tooth. I definitely get away with the... Actually, no, come to think of it, I had a donut. I forgot. I had a donut. And then next meal, mid-brunch lunch, was jelly beans. So, yeah, no, I like a banana bread with chocolate chips. I'm in. Maybe some powdered sugar.
What kind of donut guy are you?
So I like most donuts. Today's was like a hipster layered $3 donut. But it was from the donut store that sells $5 donuts. So I felt like I was taking it easy.
Yeah.
It's just a glazed. It's just their version of a glazed donut, and one costs $3. And I think it's delicious, but it is a splurge. I do feel wasteful. I'm very conscious of like, that is way too much for one donut. But knowing they have more expensive donuts, I feel okay with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. You went to the expensive restaurant and you got an appetizer, basically.
Yes. Yeah, that can be fine. I was like, you know what? Just that'll be the entree. I'll just use that as the entree. I'm fine. Well, Haley, I don't know a ton about you. I read your stuff on The Ringer. Do you have a favorite basketball team? I couldn't come up with what I thought it was.
My favorite basketball team is the Louisville Cardinals.
Oh.
Professionally, no, I just follow players.
I was about to say, I don't recognize the Louisville Cardinals, but yes, keep going.
Yeah, they're deep in the West. I just get attached to certain teams and players every year.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. So this year it's like I've really been into the Nets and the Wolves and the Hornets and the Raptors and the Bucks and a couple others. Honestly, it's been rotating since teams have changed so much this year. But no, I don't have a favorite one.
But no Jazz for Donovan Mitchell?
Yeah, no, I have been into the Jazz. It was such a hard start to the season that I kind of floated away from them, but they have looked so much better of late.
You didn't abandon them when Donovan Mitchell wore that sweatshirt with the definition of rookie? Because I kind of jumped off the bandwagon. I jumped off the bandwagon then. I'm like, that's embarrassing. I was pulling for Donovan Mitchell. I'm like, I'm out. I can't.
It was tough, but I have to stay with Donovan because he went to Louisville, where I went to school.
Yeah.
So from the very beginning, I've always been like a huge Donovan Mitchell fan, and I had to just hold on tight because he's the best basketball player we have from our school in the NBA right now. So I'm still with him.
Who's the old? Was Purvis Ellison from Louisville?
Sweatshirts and all. No, yeah, he was.
He was? Okay.
Yep, he was.
I was trying to think of another well-known Louisville player. So you just bounce around. That sounds freeing. I'm a Memphis Grizzlies fan, and I want to break up with them. Like, I want to be done.
Yeah, I could see that. I would too at the moment. It is freeing. It's nice. At the same time, I don't have the like heartache. I reserve that for college basketball, which Louisville gives me enough. But, attaching yourself to certain players, like I'm obviously a huge LeBron James fan. And so like there's enough heartache in that, especially this season. It's been so hard to watch the team and like him operate and him be on Instagram outside of, the games and everything. It's all been really difficult.
It's been tough.
I'm still there for him.
Well, so you're saying the Instagram, are you talking about specifically the celebratory milestone posts that he puts up many times after horrific losses?
There's just a lot of it. Yes. It just does not match. Like if you only looked at his Instagram this season, you would think he was doing so great. And you'd think, well, he is. You would think that the Lakers were doing really well and they were making the playoffs and everything was going according to plan. And that's just absolutely not been true. But how he acts, and then it's also kind of just hard. Like he's just such a dad, and like the dancing and the rapping in the cars. Like I look at it and I'm like, dude, you're just a dad. And he is. He's 34 years old.
Well,
he's a nerdy dad on Instagram.
Who's putting their negative stuff on Instagram though? Everyone uses Instagram to be like, look how good things are going here. Look at this nice whatever panoramic vista I'm looking at right now, or look at this meal I just ate. They're not saying like, hey guys, I got back from the gym and I kind of wussed out on my final set and like, I'm not really doing really good right now.
And I just bought the cheapest donut at an expensive donut place.
That's right. You're not going to make me feel bad about this cheap donut.
That's a good point. But you're publicly losing, and it's like people need you to be upset about this.
Yes.
Like people need to know that you are upset, because also a lot of people think that he put himself and the team in this position, which I kind of disagree with. But I mean, people want him to be upset. And so it's just kind of tough seeing. I mean, personally, if I accomplish that in my career, the things that he's accomplished, these milestones he's putting on Instagram, like I'd put it on Instagram too.
Well, there's no comparison. You're saying if I was perhaps the second greatest human being of all time in this field, I'm not going to let it bring me down. I mean, that's fair. But I think what you said about people want him to want to see some form of pain, or I mean, not contrition, but just like some acknowledgement of like, yeah, this is rough right now. I get that. That's like my anger. Not to bring it back to my life always. I just want the Memphis Grizzlies to acknowledge, like, you know what, guys, we screwed up a few things. Like some things went poorly. And not every press conference or addressing of the media be like, you know what, this is going to the plan we set out. We had a couple of different, scenarios that we're okay with, and we're definitely inside the thing we're okay with. Like, no, just say this is going real bad. It's all going real bad. We want to give the Celtics our pick, and we can't even do it. Like, we can't even get out of the bottom 8, and don't act like this is part of the plan, because later they're going to send up their GM again, and he's going to say, like, you know what, there's 8 guys in this draft we like, so we like where we're at right now. This worked out perfectly. So I just acknowledge that we're in pain and it hurts, and I can stick with you. If you're not acknowledging our pain, it makes me want to become an NBA nomad, an agnostic, just flitting from favorite player to favorite player. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah, but it's not going to be as rewarding when they finally turn it around, which
right.
it seems
You
like will not
always,
happen
yeah.
anytime soon.
That's the abusive relationship. You want to be here when it gets good. It's going to feel much better. You're going to, yeah. Let's talk about, so you the Lakers, obviously LeBron James, it's the biggest story in the league kind of. And I feel like I don't normally like talking about the biggest story, but this is just incredible that like this Western
There's
Conference.
so many different aspects of it.
Well, so the Western Conference playoff race is over. I thought it was going to be amazing, but over the weekend, the Lakers were engulfed in flames. The Kings had their schedule got really tough. They dropped 5 of 6 against good teams, which will happen. The Timberwolves were like creeping up into the playoff race, sort of. No one really noticed, and then they lost horribly in 3 straight games, giving up a ton of points. But again, in the big story again, like there's the Lakers. So you don't think it's all kind of on LeBron because the national narrative, like the feel of the world, it feels like everyone hates LeBron James now. Everyone blames LeBron James. I can't tweet anything about the Lakers with people like replying like it's all LeBron. Like he's killed the team. He's killed the franchise. The way him and Anthony Davis have become hated in the last month is truly stunning. So how much do you lay at the feet of LeBron James' pursuit of whatever it is, basketball, media empire, or how much of it do you think is just, it just didn't work out? He's in a tough conference. He got hurt. Lonzo Ball got hurt.
Well, first of all, I don't hate you, LeBron. So everyone can hate you, but I never will. Actually, no, I've said this before on the Ringers Group Chat podcast, but you can put blame on LeBron because he is the most powerful player in basketball right now, but you have to put a ceiling on the blame because he was signed to a franchise. And at some point, that franchise has to make the decision that ultimately it is the franchise with the front office who makes decisions and he is a player. And, of all the people involved in everything that's happened and everything that the Lakers done to get to this point, LeBron is, like I said before, a player. Jeannie Buss hired someone who has never been a GM, someone who's never been a president, a first-time head coach, which granted did happen before the season, but still he's inexperienced too. All of these people had to make decisions in free agency signings. We can't just simply say that, LeBron built a bad team because he could have suggested these guys and said, let's get some guys who will do some temporary signings, some 1-year signings. It'll be fine. Like I did this the last couple of years with the Cavs because I think that's kind of what we're all assuming had happened was that he had some say in who they signed and who was on their roster. But at the same time, there are grown-ups who made decisions to make this roster who were in charge of it that are not players, and he is not a member of the front office, and so they deserve a ton of blame. And honestly, I think they get blame, but I don't think they get as much as they should, because from LeBron's time with the Cavs, we just assume that he has such a heavy hand in the say because they're so scared that he's going to leave. Well, guess what? He signed a 4-year contract. He's not leaving the Lakers, and at some point they have to I guess take responsibility isn't the right word for it, but I think a lot of it is on them that we are somehow assigning to LeBron because sure, he was injured, Lonzo was injured, but the roster that they built didn't take any accountability for the fact that this season might not be perfect, for the fact that these young guys might not have what it takes to make a strong playoff push, for the fact that this guy is 35 years old and might be injured. This might happen and it might not be a perfect season. And also to account for all of the changes that happen, schematically, all the things that they'd have to take account for, 3-point shooting, defense, things that they weren't strong in last year. So it's almost like I don't want to take some blame off LeBron because I also do think that he probably had some say in building this roster, but at the same time, that's not his job. And if he was building a bad roster, then as the front office, it is your responsibility to say, these guys that you're suggesting, we don't think that they'll be able to do it. And we're going to sign these people because that's your job, is to have that kind of oversight of roster building. And at the end of the day, if he also said, okay, but midseason, like, trust me, I can get Anthony Davis here. You have to
Right.
also be able to pick that plan apart. You have to say, what if this goes wrong? What if this backfires, that your agency is going to publicly embarrass a franchise and that they are going to resent us to the point that they will never make this trade happen and embarrassingly expose what we are offering as a trade, with never intending to actually trade with us. I think a lot more of it should be falling on the front office. And if the problem is that they're inexperienced or not qualified, then I think a lot more of the blame should fall on ownership.
Yeah, I can't get over the whole, just every storyline we've been through. So once LeBron announces going to the Lakers, and all our Lakers buddies are like going crazy, and it's like the best news. You're like, wow, it's a huge shift for the league. And then every move they made was just roundly ridiculed. And I fell into it being like,
outside of Rondo, everything was terrible.
Well, so it was like, this makes no
Everything
sense.
was terrible.
This makes no sense. And then I'm thinking like, but I trust LeBron James, and I couldn't wrap my brain around the Lakers, missing the playoffs. And now I look at this team, and just you look at the guys who left, like the guys who even weren't wanted, the good trades that they got rid of, like Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance. Those guys would be super helpful. Like, not obviously there's salary cap ramifications. Those guys under big deals. They wanted to clear the deck, to maybe get some guys in. No guys came in. They ended up not using the money on anywhere else. So now I'm looking at this team thinking, if this team still had Brook Lopez, Julius Randle, and not LeBron James,
D'Angelo
Russell, even to go back, the other year, this team, that Lakers team is better than this current iteration with LeBron James. And that's I don't know, that makes my mind kind of explode. And it is a mess. And I don't know if it's a mess because something weird happened with the behind the scenes dealings of, we thought Anthony Davis was coming and that made it all make sense. And now that it didn't happen, now we're in a big mess. It might be foreshadowing to what the Knicks did with Porzingis. Like, if they don't get Durant, does that make everything a mess? But I'm at a loss that now the Los Angeles Lakers, with who I was well prepared to argue is the greatest player of all time, LeBron James, very recently, now they're getting turned down by Carmelo Anthony, who just doesn't think the Lakers are good enough for him.
I'm not sure that that's Melo's doing. It might be the Lakers, honestly.
When the Woj bomb dropped,
they're probably. I seriously think that they probably are like, look, dude, we can't like invite more chaos and change to this team. And like, very much that is what there's no evidence suggesting that he would be anything other than that.
Yeah. I mean, I just laughed heartily, I think, like most people, when I think it was Woj today with the, like the Lakers and Carmelo have decided, you know what, maybe that's not the best match. It's like, well, yeah, we knew that forever ago, but now it's now when the season's over, they're like, all right, yeah, let's not do it. Maybe it's a bad idea.
Well, the wording from the Woj tweet cracked me up, and I know that this is just his wording, but like he said that they are pausing on talks until the franchise can make a turn back toward the pursuit of playoffs contention. And I was like, okay, pausing. So are you saying that like 10 games from now, if they turn it around, like you're going to sign Melo? That doesn't make any sense. And also it says that like, it sounds like when you say they're pausing until they can pursue the playoffs again, like that also kind of sounds like a choice. Like, have you decided to give up on the playoffs?
Yeah, no. And it's a very like relationship language. Like, we're just taking a little time out. We're taking a break. Yeah. We're taking a pause. We're gonna circle back. We're gonna circle back in a little bit to see where we're all at. But right now, yeah, it's probably not gonna happen. So another team that's actually probably going to the playoffs, more than likely, had a breakup that I thought was kind of strange and unexpected. Pau Gasol got bought out of the San Antonio Spurs. You don't always see a guy get bought out on a team that's going to the postseason to go to another team that's going to the postseason. Do we know any reason why Powell decided, like, you know what, I'm done here. I'd rather go to a favorite in the Eastern Conference as opposed to stick around in San Antonio?
I think that this is actually a lot friendlier than it sounds on its surface. It does. At first, it did kind of seem like maybe something had happened and they had some kind of issue. But I mean, if you look at the actual facts of this season, he's 38. He had a stress fracture in his foot in November. He missed the 26 games. He couldn't seem to get back into the rotation. Now they have a different big P. They have Jacob playing backup, and like he's pretty solid. And I think that they actually were doing each other a solid. I think that he wanted to play more. They owed him, I think, $16 million this season. Now they have, I believe, $2.5 million to use, and I think they'll probably use it on a backup center because I don't think that he was exactly what they were looking for. There's still, Gortat out there. There's still Greg Monroe, and actually the Lakers could be interested in both those guys as well. And I think that he probably just wanted to play more. And so maybe, he had been talking to Milwaukee, and Milwaukee thought that they could make that a possibility. Or maybe, he had a talk with Popovich, and he was like, I've got to sign someone else, to take your minutes. And especially, the last two games, Jacob and LaMarcus have both started. So they probably do need a stronger backup there at the 5 to get those bench minutes. So I think it's honestly a lot more innocent than it sounds, but it did seem weird at first hearing that news.
Yeah, I like that option. I like the idea. I guess a lot of people have inferred that Powell opted out, I guess it was last season, to give them the salary cap freedom to try to get someone. And then when they couldn't get anyone, they re-signed him for the same price, because that opt-out was crazy. And again, was a definite, that's an under the table or whatever secret handshake agreement, because there was no way he should opt out of that money. But then it was very surprising they re-signed him again. But then I guess it was, like, hey, all right, it didn't work out. Why don't you go? And maybe he just said, I'll go be a bench player on a team that's probably going a little bit deeper. Check out a new city, a
little bit further, yeah.
The cuisine of Milwaukee. Check out that Milwaukee Opera. I don't know if he ever made it to the Opera when he was up in Chicago. Going to the opposite end of the spectrum, teams that are real bad. You wrote a piece on The Ringer pretty recently about how the Suns' constant losing was perhaps hurting DeAndre Ayton. The Suns have been a team I'm always interested in. They were like my favorite team before the Grizzlies moved to Memphis, before I latched onto that geographic thing with the Grizzlies. So in the 90s, I like the Suns pretty well, but I've detested their current setup. And then also Kevin Arnovitz released a piece today on ESPN about Robert Sarver and the big mess there. So do you think this constant losing is getting to Ayton? Do you think this team is salvageable? Is a Devin Booker salvageable? Someone who on my podcast I rip all the time. I can't stand him. But anyway, has the culture messed up Devin Booker, and is it now getting to DeAndre Ayton?
I mean, yeah, I think anytime that a team that's been tanking for quite a while gets that high draft pick that they want, I think it's definitely a huge adjustment for the draft pick, because if you think about it, their entire career and reputation has been built on winning and their ability to win. So, with Ayton, he won his high school. I can't remember where he went right now, but he won them their first national championship. And then he had a good year in college. And, all of that is rewarded by you becoming a high draft pick. And then all of a sudden you have a total inability to win. And it's kind of outside of you. And it's based on what this franchise has built. And basically, like, if you think about it, he is like the prize for everything. Like, he is the thing that is supposed to save this and turn it around. And that's why we do the lottery system the way that we do in the NBA. And that's a lot of pressure on a draft pick, but also it's kind of not entirely in his hands. There's no way with this roster. It's not a situation like the Celtics where they have a ton of talent on this roster and they just can't seem to figure it out. It's the Suns. And at the beginning of the year, it did seem like maybe they would have a better season than last year. Last year, of course, they finished worse than the league. This year, they hired a new coach who seemed like he'd be exciting and different. They traded for Ryan Anderson. They got Trevor Ariza. Devin Booker was coming off his best statistical season as a pro. So it seemed like they would have at least a bump. And what's interesting is that this year we've actually seen quite a few teams who were deep in the tank come out of it and see some success. So, for example, the Nets have been really pleasant surprise, and so have the Kings. So it seemed like maybe it was starting to be the Suns' time. But there's just so much dysfunction at the top. You talked about that piece that came out today. I thought that was that's a pretty good example of it. But of course, like, I think this is totally getting to him. And the quotes that I used in that piece, it happened last week after he had they just lost to the Cavs. He said, I have it written down, he said, it's not easy to deal with, talking about the losing streak, because they were on a 17-game losing streak at that point. I'm going to try my best to take over, real talk. And then he also said, I gave them enough time to let them run what they got to run. And now I'm just about to take over. It's that time to take over and not really look back. So obviously, if you're Ayton, like, what you want are more post touches. And that's probably what you think is going to help you guys win. If, because that's like that's your plan to affect the offense. But, there's only so much that one person, especially a rookie who's very inconsistent, can do to quote unquote take over when the roster is what the Suns roster. And again, it's not what, Boston's situation is. You just don't have the same opportunity talent wise with the Suns. And B, like, the quote is saying, I gave them enough time to let them run what they've got to run. Unless you're a guard or a ball handler, it doesn't really work like that. You don't run things in the post. You know what I mean? You're waiting for touches. So I think that a lot of that just showed like frustration, and I would be frustrated too. A 17-game losing streak, especially, the Suns are not necessarily in the same situation as like the Knicks, where everyone can see that they want to lose, even though they, have not been doing such a great job at losing lately. It seems like the Suns, especially at the beginning of the year, like really wanted to try to make it work. So I can imagine that's very frustrating. And actually, you said Devin Booker. He had a quote too. He said that the team was not on the same page and that it was the worst it's been since he's been here, which is saying a lot.
Right.
And like that also speaks to his years of frustration. I mean, he's been there 4 years. They've missed the playoffs for 4 years. They're probably going to finish worse than the league for the second straight year. And with Booker, I can imagine that it's frustrating because, they keep going to the draft and they got another guy who was supposed to like help save the franchise. And I think that he probably feels like a little timer on his back. I am not as out on Booker as you are, but I think that that's because what is expected of him in this position, like the kind of guy who can take a tanking team out of this tank is not going to be a 22-year-old who plays like Devin Booker plays. But I'm not out on him. I just don't think that he's equipped to take this out of the tank. But also, like, to be honest, like the organization is not helping him at all.
Right. Yeah,
they're just not.
There were some ugly quotes for James Jones saying like there's I don't know what it was. Roughly he was expressing, there's two kinds of GMs, those that pop open their laptop, and I'm not that one. I just like to not open my laptop and do the work. Like, you're like, what? Like, I'm not sure what you're trying to say, James. Like, I just let it wash over me. I don't actually look up, Well, so like Devin Booker, he's a guy, obviously, supremely talented offensively. He was always a guy that when I watched him play, I'm like, I'm not sure he has it. Obviously he could be a good player on a good team, I guess, but I always thought he's like wildly overrated. And then this season, in that 17 game losing streak, like he actually had a personal 21 game losing streak. And I was just like, who in the world who's any good, who scores 20 points? Like, I was actually trying to look this up on Basketball Reference and couldn't figure it out. Like, which players have averaged over 20 points per game and lost 21 consecutive games, during that stretch while they're averaging that many points? Because I figured, like, are we going to go to a Sharif Abdul-Rahim? Like, who are the bad, like the bucket getters on really historically terrible teams? And I was like, because that's what Devin Booker is. He's hit the extension time. He's no longer on the cheap. He's played 4 years and they're still so bad. And obviously, I'm not putting it all on Devin Booker. This franchise is a shambles. But I'm just
think about it this way though. Think about think about Cat, right?
Yeah.
Karl Anthony Towns. So unless there would have been that giant trade, he probably Minnesota would probably still be very bad.
Yeah. No, yeah, Cat is
and so that is like very much organizational, and like Karl still has a lot of the same problems. He's definitely very impressive in certain ways like Devin is, but he still has huge problems. But they're both so young, and it's just like they are the main guys on these franchises, so they get a lot of pressure and a lot of heat. for not being complete enough to like pull a team out of a tank.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I look at a player like Luka, and I do think that like if Luka was in the Sun situation, it would be totally different. But that's just not Devin Booker. And like to be honest, like I'm not even really sure. You know what I mean? Like that's not even like Karl-Anthony Towns can't do that by himself. And Luka's not even by himself. You know, he's not. Look at Dallas. So
no,
it's a weird situation.
I think that's the exact point where if you put in a guy who maybe people don't think of as gifted or as whatever, like as dynamic as Devin Booker. I'm trying to think of an example of someone who I think like Drew Holiday, everyone accepts is you know, a really good player, a good two-way player. But I feel like average fans might be like, those guys are kind of similar. I think if you put Drew Holiday on this Suns team, they wouldn't have 13 wins. That's crazy. Like they'd have, you know, double that. I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like I think Devin Booker is so they are different players. But I think Devin. I'm trying to think of another like guard, like a sort of combo guardish guy. Like he's so far away from Drew Holiday, a guy who's not really an all-star. Is like kind of my take. Like, but again,
I see what you're saying.
Where also Karl-Anthony Towns is a guy where he puts up these incredible stats and he like breaks true shooting, and you're like, how can a guy be this good? But then you watch him. Well, like when I don't watch every Timberwolves game, but when I watch Timberwolves games, he puts up the quietest like 30 and 20. Where you're like, yeah, he wasn't really dominating.
Well, Karl has a lot of empty stats.
Right, yeah.
But then again, guys on bad teams always have empty stats.
It's
you know,
true.
They just do, like, because they're not contributing too much. And the other thing to that point is that young guys who are on young teams, and we see this a lot, have to learn how to win in the NBA. And that is so difficult when you are put on a team that has been bad for years.
Right.
And you are the biggest talent. And that like sounds like it should come easier, but like that's actually a really difficult thing, like learning how to win in the NBA. And it's something that when you look at the rookies who have been able to do it, there's a lot of veteran help there. And there's also like a culture around it. And that is totally missing in Phoenix. Like even like you think about like Tatum, right? And to some extent, even when you go over and you think about like the Jazz, there are older people around Donovan. There were his rookie year that like kind of were used to winning, and even just like the culture seemed a little bit different because they had been successful like recently, even though they traded their best offensive player, you know, and he was gone. They had to totally change their offense to be around someone else to find scoring elsewhere, you know. But there was like a winning culture in place, whereas it's just not the way it is in Phoenix.
Yeah, your guy Donovan Mitchell was another one. I feel like last year in his rookie season, I was like, if you swap Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell, the Suns would be way better. I don't feel like that's a controversial thing to say. But also, again, Devin Booker, as you said, the organization, they did him no favors. Like Earl Watson being named coach. Earl Watson's never won a playoff game in his career as a player or in his one season as a D-League assistant. Like he had no experience whatsoever.
Yeah, Earl Watson
crazy.
Has literally...
Yeah,
he had no experience. That was insane. I still go to that. I'm like, this guy like had no experience even as an assistant.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It's just wild.
Well, anyway, Haley, last thing, like what's one thing you're the most looking forward to for the final few weeks of the season?
Oh man, I really am excited about the East this year. I want to see how the Bucks and the Raptors fare. Because you know they're both like relatively so new, these actual teams.
Right.
So I want to see like how far can Giannis go?
I want to see
like, you know, can Kawhi take them out of the East, and which will falter more in the last 20 or so games of the season. And then also, you know, there's the worst teams, or not, I wouldn't say worse, but the less stable teams in the East, like the Sixers and the Celtics. It's like which one of them can kind of stabilize in these last 20 games of the season. I'm really excited for all that. And also the Nets, like I cannot get enough of them. I really would put my money on them to be the first round upset of the East. The Nets
are kind of stubbing their toe, and then I think they have a big road trip coming up too. I mean,
they have a really hard schedule coming up.
Yeah,
really hard schedule. Yeah. Well, I think they're like 6th right now. I think. Yeah. Let me check.
I think the Pistons.
No, they're 7th right now, and then they have the Pistons just passed them last night. But they have a really hard. I think they have like the 3rd hardest schedule in the league remaining. So it's going to be tough. If they can finish in good enough positioning, then I would definitely look like if they played the Celtics the first round, that'll be really tough for the Celtics. And that'd be a fun series. But if they finish like 8th, they'll lose first round. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to see how many games under 500 will that 8th seed be in the East. We got the Magic sitting there 5 games. They're gonna end up even more. But again, if we seeded the playoffs 1 through 16, regardless of conference, LeBron James is still out. So there you have it. Haley, thanks so much. Where can people find your stuff going forward?
On theringer.com, and you can also follow me on Twitter at HaleyOsomething.
Haley, it was a pleasure. Appreciate you giving your time, and look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks to Haley for coming on. If you want some more Fast Break Breakfast, you can get that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. Remember, Nashville people, we have our final regular season watch party on Friday night at the Mainstay at 7 p.m. for Grizzlies Jazz. We'll be unloading all the remaining bits from the prize cabinet. There might be some more Gasol items and other things of departed Grizzlies. But come and hang out with us there at the Mainstay at 7 p.m. Your first drink will be free. All right. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You guys are the best. Thanks for listening. And remember, breakfast is the most important thing.
Yeah, never apologize for being G&G. Fast break, man. You understand?